I could just vibe code this myself. I don't even have to pay 40 or 50 bucks, right?
It gives you the power to have a full development team at your beck and call.
Everything is just kind of like free.
But in this case, it keeps your context window small. It's more efficient for token usage, and as well as getting the best product out of the large language model. You can do all of the things that obviously Claude Code can do, but in a much more structured way.
We can do anything with AI now. It's just a question of, can you imagine it? Today, Ron Demerit, AI Captain member, is going to share with us his Solopreneur freelance developer rig. This is a complicated harness with Claude Code that he has developed on his own over time based on the initial templates from Scott Graham that he showed us a while back. So without further ado, show us what's up, Ron. I think first, can you show us some of the coolest stuff you've made with this rig? And then from there, we can go into the nitty gritty of how it works and how you built it.
Of course. Hey, thanks, Jordan. As you mentioned, this architecture of using, I guess, what I've called a harness, we've also called rigs. You introduced me to this idea through Cheddar Fox. I forget, is it Scott? Is that right, Scott Graham?
Scott
I know
Graham,
him. Yeah. Cheddar Fox. I love that name. And I thought it was a very interesting concept that caught my attention. And since I saw that first hour-long video with you and Scott, I've been experimenting with the concept, and I've been able to do a number of interesting things. I think my favorite thing that I've been able to do using this architecture is develop a freelance developer harness, or a solopreneur harness, whatever floats your boat as far as giving it a name. But basically what it does is it gives you the power to have a full development team at your beck and call, so that you can ideate, you can develop, you can do all of the things that obviously Claude Code can do, but in a much more structured way, and even in a compartmentalized way if you were to have clients or kind of that type of a business architecture. So what I'll do, I'll show you real quick. I'll show you a couple of examples of applications that I've written using this harness. And then I'll give you a breakdown of what the harness is, kind of how Claude Code works with the harness, then kind of how you can use the harness. And then we'll also share, if somebody wants to download a template, which is what I've generated here for everybody, they can start to make their own harness and turn it into the development team that they love.
Yeah, no matter where you're watching this, there will be a link somewhere close to this repo that you can fork and play with.
That's perfect. One of the funnest things that I've done with the harness is this app here that I call Canta Conmigo, which is intended for Spanish language learners. It presents you a YouTube video, or I guess when I say video, music video. I love music, so I like to concentrate on music. So this is where I focused for this specific project, is play a Spanish language music videos, provide the ability to translate in real time. I suppose it's the trick is it's not really real time. We do use AI to process the video, do the translation, extract the lyrics, annotate the lyrics, and these type of things, so that when you're actually interacting with the website, it's not using any AI functions, but that the intelligence or the information behind it does use Claude and other AI tools to make it happen. So let me just log in really quickly here. Right now, I have only fully developed 3 songs that give you the idea of what it is. So here's one of my favorite songs by Natalia Lafourcade called Hasta la Raíz. And I'm going to go ahead and mute it. There we go. I'm going to mute it because I don't think the sound will come through, but I think you get the idea. You should go and check this song out. It's super cool. It's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. But as the song plays, these lyric lines highlight and kind of tracks you through the song and gives you an idea of where it is. Still working on a few features that I want to implement, such as pause on click, so that if you see a word, you go, oh, profundo, what does this mean? You can, you pause it. It pops up. It gives you a definition, and also gives you the relevant line, and then, of course, the English translation. Then, of course, if you were to click on profundo again, the video continues, and so on and so forth, until you find limpiar. What is limpiar? Oh, it's to clean. What do you know? And they're talking in this case about humo sagrado, the sacred smoke. But if we click the Explain tab down here, it actually will give us, in some of these instances, not all, because it's not always interesting, but in this case, there are interesting annotations that are available for these translations. Like I said, it tells you a little bit about the sacred smoke, tells you how we're talking about para plus infinitive, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool.
And so
as a user, I can just put in any YouTube video link?
No, not any YouTube video. So this does have to be processed by a person to make sure the lyrics line up, to make sure the annotations are correct, and those type of things. So it's something that has to be done offline, but then of course uploaded to the site to be in this format.
So when it comes to the freelance developer harness, I imagine you vibe coded this with that, but the processing of each video is still done as a human?
In a way. So it's actually two components. So yes, obviously the vibe coding portion, but then I've also developed, vibe coded, of course, a series of tools that you use inside of this application that will, like I said, extract the lyrics, do the translation, add the annotations, and then, of course, populate the database and upload everything to the site, which then makes it a video available as part of the library.
So I'm curious, how much of so yesterday in my own harness for making videos, I actually I tweeted this video that I made with my Venice video harness. It's a one-shot, 30-second Wes Anderson style teaser of like a Bitcoin dystopia, like everyone's leaving on a train to Pluto because they printed $10 trillion. And the whole thing is a one shot between the shots, the characters, quality assurance of the characters, the music, the soundtrack, and a narration. And then I said, hey, hard code subtitles into this. And it did, but it was off. So it didn't get the timing right. So it knew the script of the voiceover, but didn't have the timing right. So I said, okay, well, we need to fix this because the timing's not right. And I don't know exactly what it did, but it went through and it created a whole new skill and process for determining where exactly the sound is, like where each word in the sound file is, and when to hard code that. So I'm curious, what's stopping you from the rig being able to process these videos and do the quality assurance?
Well, in essence, the rig does do that. So I have a series of so there's a separate rig. Okay, so Molten Deploy, the freelance harness, has generated another repository that has all of the web code, the database, everything that's needed from a development perspective. It also has a series of Claude commands.
Can we see that?
Of course. Yeah, I think that's a good point here. So the Solopreneur harness creates a repository that has all of the code and everything in it, and that's what's in here somewhere. So like here's your front end and your back end. So this is all of the code that's being executed, and then there's also a series of commands that you can use for post processing. So to add a song. So this probably won't work out exactly as I intend because the transcription isn't available directly off YouTube. So this will be a great example of using. Okay, so here we can just basically song new. Like I said, this is the command. He knows what to do. I give him a YouTube link. He'll extract it, and then he'll basically add a stub to the website. By the way, this context CTX plugin is great. It basically helps to keep a certain portion of your conversation out of the LLM so that you keep your context window relatively small and obviously extend your usage.
What is it keeping out?
That's an aside. But it basically has a local database that it stores this and basically says, hey, we can do this. We can do the processing. Claude doesn't have to know everything that we're doing. We'll just do it, and then we'll return the result. And then the result's what's the important part, not necessarily this JavaScript and the full runtime, those type of things. But anyway, so this might take a little bit, but this is the idea. So we import the song. The next step would be to extract the lyrics, Anyway, one of these, the translate. So translate, which will pull the transcript, do the translation, and then, of course, you can run the song align, which will attempt to align the song. But there's a couple of ways to do the alignment. I use Whisper as the engine on the back end. It actually doesn't use Claude. It uses a local instance of Whisper in this case.
And then it just creates a YAML file for every song?
That's right. Well, for locally, it creates the YAML, but I actually have a SQL database that it stores everything in. And this is actually what's feeding the website.
And where are you hosting the SQL database?
Well, that's the second project I wanted to show you.
Okay.
In this case, it's just local on my machine because right now Canta Conmigo is only running on my local machine. But in the future,
okay.
That's right. But in the very near future, which could be today even, it'll actually be stored somewhere else. So anyway, it'll upload the song, it'll do all these things. It's not finished, so it's not going to be there. But let's say that my alignment wasn't actually the way it needed to be.
Right.
I actually have the ability to come in here and calibrate my timing.
Cool. Oh, wow. You got a whole interface for it. Cool.
That's right. And so I can basically turn on tap to mark, and then as the video plays, of course, you guys aren't going to be able to hear this, but we'll just advance it a little bit so that you get an idea. You can see the green line. This is what it currently has. And if I click on something and then let it go, I can use my keyboard to up and down and then back. I don't know if you can see here at the top, we can scrub back and forth. So I use my keys to scrub. And then you use your space key. So if you go like there, you're like, oh, it was off. Use your space key, and that actually marks the lyrics. And then, then you save.
It reminds me of subtitling software I've used.
Okay.
Like on-browser subtitling. So you can just scroll through it, press space. Yeah. And it's great to have all those keyboard shortcuts, huh?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a mess. That took a little bit of work to get this to work correctly. Be able to show where am I going, which line is selected, and then how do we, of course, you can jump to a section, say, oh, well, actually start all the way up here, and then just clicking on it will give you the ability to tap.
So it just does the best it can based on, ideally, if there's a transcript file in the YouTube video already, and if then it's going to use Whisper. But this is one thing I've been noticing, and I'm curious if this will ever get solved. AI and music, and particular AI and vocals. So right now I've been working on an EP with a friend for a long time, and we can never find a singer for it. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I just want to make AI vocals. And I've looked into doing it, and I'm like, this is actually not a simple process between key. Getting the melody is probably the easiest part. But then making sure it's in the right key, it's in the right voice you like, and then it's timed correctly to the music, and you don't want to just use Suno or something. You want to kind of have a little more control over it. So I actually started vibe coding a tool for that. And yeah, this just reminds me of how AI and vocals in particular still don't really mesh well. The AI still has trouble with, like in this case, like timing it up. So.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. But it is getting better. And like I said, I was able to use Whisper models in an offline fashion. So obviously here you can see it'll attempt to auto-align, but that's based on the transcript that it extracts, as opposed to coming in here manually doing it or using Whisper to make that happen.
Right. It's a cool use case. Yeah, like I said, it reminds me of transcripting, like subtitling software I've used before, where you just put your video up and then same thing. There's the line. You press space to edit it. You can keep scrolling through. This is a cool, unique, and clever use case of that same kind of interfacing.
Well, good. I'm glad you like it. It sounds like heading in the right direction, which is good.
Plus, I just think it'd be a fun tool. Like, this would have been cool to have in my high school Spanish classes,
Dude, you would be el maestro. See?
Yeah.
So, that would be great. But yeah, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this, but we'll figure out what the next steps are. Most of what you're going to see that I've done literally was just for fun, to get more experience using all of these tools, how best to tie everything together, and get ready to make it more effective. Which something else I developed using this harness is I love the voice transcription. So the ability to basically talk to Claude. As you know, Claude has a voice mode as well. If you didn't know, it has a voice mode. It doesn't work very well, especially when you start putting it inside of VS Code, which is where I like to work all of this. So I use several of these whisper style programs that allow you to have a subscription or get a demo or whatever. And most of them were okay. But of course they cost money, and I'm cheap and I'm resourceful. And so I said, well, why am I relying on that? Why don't I just build my own? And so I basically leveraged the harness to build a whisper transcription software that runs natively on macOS. And what's amazing is that, and this uses all local models, so local open source whisper models, all locally on the device, so we don't have to make any web calls or anything like this. And if I may say so, the performance is actually just amazing. I can't believe that it works as well as it does. So in 1 second, I'll show you a little bit. I actually have to. So there's a lot of things I have to figure out in this whole development process. I'm not a Mac developer, a Mac guy. I spent all of my time doing any development work on Linux-based operating systems. Nothing super sophisticated like Mac, but I guess the point in saying that is it takes a little bit of getting used to, because you have to come in, you have to give all of these extra permissions, because I haven't quite figured out why I can't get my signing to stick, so that we don't have to mess with these permissions each and every time. Anyway, okay, so now it's working, or it's loaded. It's bound to a specific key sequence. In this case, it's just holding down the right option button. And let's see.
Ken just mentioned he'd love to see this on Linux because current available implementations are subpar. And, that got me thinking too, like I have this app called Whisper Transcription on macOS, and I think it costs like 40 or 50 bucks like one time, and then you download local whisper models, and then you can even plug in API keys for external providers and chat with your transcript. And it's pretty cool, but it's one of those things that AI opens you up to realizing, I was like, I could just vibe code this myself. I don't even have to pay 40 or 50 bucks, right?
That's right.
What you're getting, I guess, are the updates, and there's a whole lot of features in there, and it's been thought out. It's been thought through. But I say vibe code, my first reaction was like, hey man, just use Mac Whisper. But yeah, it looks like you got all the same functionality there, and you can add more to your heart's desire.
Yeah, and I already have the framework built out to change the tone and be able to add to it. So if you want to do a transcription, just turn what you say literally into a prompt for something. You can configure it. You want to professionalize. You want to say, "What's up, man?" But you want to be professional. It's good day, sir, and these things. So we'll see where it goes as far as. But just at the basic, it's like here, I'm just going to talk to it and we'll see how quickly it works. And if it even does work, or if it makes me look silly, let's see. So you can just see how quick that was. Did exactly. Anyway, I love it. It took me a couple of days, not very much time to get this done. Well worth the time. And it's a good way to save money.
You make a presentation for this?
I did for just the harness. I made a short little presentation. Okay, I'll show you one more example of something that I've written. So if you know, I've been working on this easing, probably fine. Oh, come on. Now it's not going to load. What did I do? I killed it. But anyway, the point is that I host probably fine on my machine here, and I built this stack called Hermit Host. And if you're familiar with like Netlify and these type of tools that basically provide you a single view that gives you the ability to manage your DNS, your websites, you just hook it up to a GitHub repo and it automatically deploys it for you. It's relatively minimal work on the person that wants to have their site deployed, but fully featured enough that it's pretty professional. Like I said, somewhere along the line, I guess probably last night as I was falling asleep, I broke this while I was working on it. So I got to figure that out. But anyway, the point is this gives you the ability to just take any GitHub repo that has, in this case, probably fine, has has just static HTML. Oh no, what's going on? You know what? Really quickly, I think I know what's happening. I think I killed it. I'm human, right? Let's go. So it's a Docker Compose application. It uses Docker images, Docker files, uses TypeScript, all of that to basically build out the interface. Also, it uses some pre-developed tools such as Coolify, Technidium, Trafic, and nothing too interesting, but it's just just kind of the build process and setting up all of the containers, mapping the containers together. So this is running like probably eight different containers, I think. You'll see when it finishes here. So each one of these, so 4 different images, and then multiple containers based on whatever the function is for that specific component. And the idea here is to have a single interface that you interact with that configures all of these components together so that you have this experience. Let's see, is this going to open now? Okay, now let's see if there we go. Okay, so anyway, so if anybody's seen Probably Fine, it's being driven in this stack all the way from the SSL certificates. So, here you can see the probablyfine.570n3r.com.
Is that your domain?
It is. It's my domain.
So you got like your own Netlify going here, your own
Exactly.
Vercel. Wow.
Exactly. And so, like in this case, I have another domain that I host called shallowfordroad.com, and I'll have some other ones.
How much do you need to know about how this stuff works to vibe code something like this?
So I think it depends. Okay, so you don't have to know a lot. If you know what you want, you can explain, you can tell the LLM what you want, and it'll build something for you.
Right.
If you know more about how these pieces should be put together, kind of the basic concepts of what the internet is, like what's a web server, how does DNS work, how does routing and switching work, you've written code, you've deployed code, and you keep an eye on what it's doing, you'll see that you actually have to stop it. Sometimes you have to stop it because I'm trying to think of a good analog, but imagine if you built something and then instead of just fixing the thing on the inside, it builds something on top of it that replicates the thing that needs to be fixed, and it'll try to pass it back and forth. It will kind of go on its own and try to do something weird. And if you're not paying attention or you don't have the most familiarity with it, I think it does have the chance to go awry. Now, it'll probably work, but I think this is where you get that concept of code AI slop and stuff where you can get malfunctioning software, systems that don't function exactly as you intended, and maybe are a little hard to maintain.
And so where is everything being hosted? On a VPS? On your home server?
My old M2 MacBook Pro.
And so you just have that plugged in at home, huh?
Yeah, I just have it plugged in at home, the lid shut down, and it's just sitting up there next to my...
And do you use a Cloudflare tunnel or anything?
No. So thank you for bringing that up. So I told you about Technidium. Technidium is the DNS that basically drives Hermit Host. I had problems because I have AT&T Fiber, and AT&T Fiber blocks port 53 UDP inbound to a network. So I can't technically host my own DNS here. So what I actually had to do is I had to build into Hermit Host to have the ability to use either Technidium
Could you zoom in a bit? I'm sorry to interrupt. There we go. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Perfect.
So yeah, the sites. So in the settings, because for my external sites, I can't get UDP port 53 inbound, I had to actually configure Hermit Host to support 2 different DNS providers. It can support Technidium, which is hosted locally, ran locally, or it can use Cloudflare, which in this case, Cloudflare to host your DNS is free. But presumably, I mean, you could connect this to any type of a DNS server that you want.
Man.
The other thing that I've done with this that is, it's actually not on this, but I have another branch that I'm working on trying to implement what I think will be a most useful feature, which this one, yeah, okay, here we go. So this doesn't work yet because I need a new machine. I need a Linux box. So I'm hoping. I bet you have some suggestions on a Linux box I should buy, Jordan. So that's my next. That's the next thing, because this feature branch that I'm working on right now gives us the ability to basically host websites internal to a network using a custom domain. So like in this case, it's using the .hh. So you can use like 10legs.hh so that you can actually deploy code internally in your house with a fully DNS aware and full certificates using a self-hosted certificate authority, so that you can do testing, or you could build your own applications and run them internally. And you wouldn't have to expose them to the internet. And you also don't run the risk of exposing internal things to the internet by having a shared system. So this is actually configurable to either be internet facing or internally facing. So if it's internet facing, then it's going to use Let's Encrypt for the automatic SSL certificate issuance. And otherwise, it's going to use the self-hosted step-ca certificate authority internally.
Wow. You know, I always get nervous imagining hosting my web apps or websites at my house.
Right.
You know, like, oh, what if my IP gets exposed? Or I don't understand it well enough to even like consider something like that.
Sure.
But over the last few years, I've been using things like Umbrel. Are you familiar with Umbrel OS?
I don't know.
If you go to getumbrel.com, like umbrella without the LA at the end, but essentially it's a little operating system that's originally was meant for Bitcoin, but now it's just all cloud apps. So you can run OpenClaw on there,
Sure.
you can run Nextcloud, and you can run any website you want. You can run any app you want internally, and then with a Cloudflare tunnel, be able to access it all over anywhere in the world. So they have their devices now, but the Umbrella OS is what it all started as, and you can just put it on a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if it's open source anymore. I know whatever you put on a Raspberry Pi, you can still get on GitHub. Mm-hmm. But this is just like a open source app, nerds paradise, because you can just install all these different open source apps. You can run a Bitcoin node, etc. But yeah, so that introduced me to the fact that no, you can host things from your house, but you have to do it the right way. So essentially a Cloudflare tunnel, I believe, is the way to evade the whole getting your IP doxed and all that.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, I'll check this out.
But yeah, but you would still need a device that can handle with what's it called? Probably fine. Are you expecting tons of traffic, or just maybe a few dozen people here and there?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, for sure.
Like how much traffic can that MacBook Pro handle?
Yeah, probably handle more than you would think, but not as much as it would need. But I'm not so popular, and so I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue.
Yeah, you never know. One viral moment.
Hey, that's all it takes, I guess. But also, of course, you could host this in AWS or something like that, which is relatively inexpensive. But yeah, those are the couple of things that I've built that impressed with. I mean, could see productionizing. Almost certainly going to release the Hermit Host as an open source project.
That's cool. I would love to mess around with that just to learn more as well, because I pay for services like Netlify. I pay like almost $100 a month for a DigitalOcean droplet, and I host a bunch of apps on there. And this is all making me realize I'm like, I could do this at home. I have the same machine. I'm paying $100 a month that has 8 gigs of RAM. Like, wait a minute, I have a Raspberry Pi that has 8 gigs of RAM, and I have an NVMe ARM to put in a couple terabytes. Like, I can get a way better deal.
For sure.
If I just get confident and comfortable hosting something at home. So.
Yeah. I guess, at least for now, it's kind of difficult to track an IP address to a home. But you can get to a city, maybe a little bit closer to a region. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, you mean like publicly if you're just like a person, but like the ISPs can do it.
Oh, for sure, the ISPs can do it. Yeah, the ISPs have you.
Yeah.
Actually, anytime you turn on a cell phone, they got you.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't even have to have internet; just the cell phone itself.
Yeah. Well, super cool, Ron. Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Yeah, these are, once again, like, there's the fact, like, we can do anything with AI now, pretty much. It's just a question of, can you imagine it? And before you showed us this Hermit Host, I didn't even think about it. Like, I use Netlify, I pay Netlify. Like, oh, I actually could probably just do that myself now in the stack, but never even crossed my mind.
Well, good. I mean, that's the idea: is exchange ideas, and let's get everybody thinking.
We've had a few good comments in the chat here. Anyone got any questions for Ron? Can we just go to the repo real quick, the freelance developer harness repo in that first tab? Can we zoom in a tiny bit, and then can we go into the Claude folder? So we got, let's just look at the agents and commands and stuff. So
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, let's go for it.
I'm just curious. So you basically just have a full team here.
Yeah, basically a full team here. Let me do it this way here. Let's go to this README.
Oh yeah, there we go.
So this basically lays out how everything works, all of the files, the agents. You can see we have 16 different agents. Here's the team. So the team is controlled by a product manager. And like I said, I can go into a demo and I can kind of show you the idea here in a minute. But a product manager basically drives the project, and drives whatever you tell it. So if you just talk to Claude, you get the model. So if we're looking at this Claude here, go away. Okay. So if you look right, this is our context window. We're using Sonnet. And if I just speak to Claude, then I'm basically talking to this model and whatever the context is that is in this context window. I know it's just the graphic bar, but you get the point. There's a context window, and that's where it is. When you construct it like this, there's a mode. Like I said, I'll show you the mode later. But where you put Claude into a product manager mode, and now when you speak to him, he knows that, hey, I'm not doing anything. Which, by the way, the product manager is configured with to use the Opus model. By the way, so if I find my product manager, there you go. So if you come into the product manager, an agent, it defines the personality, defines the roles, what he can do, what he can't do, what he must do, and as well as if you can define in here the model that you want to use, which allows Claude to basically dynamically switch which models that he uses when it spawns an agent. So all the agents don't have to be Sonnet. They can be Opus, or in the tech writer, he's going to be Haiku. Solution architect, Opus. Security reviewer, Opus. QA specialist, again, Haiku. Some of these are going to be, we're going to find a Sonnet one eventually. There you go. Front-end developer, he uses Sonnet. And the idea here is that the product manager, you give him the request, he's able to break down the request and marshal the specific resources and the agent to make its way through that workflow. In the case here, you can see that we have 3 different pillars: creative counsel, technical counsel, and a delivery counsel. And these are just like ideation, coming up with plans, implementation, troubleshooting, etc., research and development. And then you have delivery, so user experience, actual functionality, commerce, etc. And the product manager is the one that basically does that. So for each of these agents, a different model might get called. But what's important, that as the product manager calls each one of these agents, there's a unique context window for that agent, so that he has his own context window, he completes his task, then that context window goes away. And it doesn't pollute your other context windows, because there might be information that's not relevant. This is unique in the sense that when you just speak to Claude in a single window, that context window grows, and everything that you've said is what constantly gets passed back into it. And this is where you get hallucinations and forgetting things and, I don't know, whatever other problems that people might complain about. But in this case, it keeps your context window small. It's more efficient for token usage, and as well as getting the best product out of each of the models or the large language model.
That's definitely my favorite part of these harnesses is the built-in context engineering, and it will just spawn these sub-agents just by default. And I remember back when you had to really force Claude to spawn a sub-agent. Like, hey, use a sub-agent, use a sub-agent. And
yeah.
now the models are doing that on their own anyway pretty well, but these harnesses take it to the next level with the context engineering here. It's so helpful.
And you do have to pay attention because if you remind me, I'll show this as an example. But I got into a habit of occasionally asking, like, okay, because when you talk to the harness, it will answer, okay, I'm doing something. And so occasionally I thought, well, let me just ask who is doing what. And I would find that sometimes he'd be like, me, the agent, is doing the work. I'm like, I don't want you to do it. The front-end developer needs to be doing it. Oh, okay, sorry. Hey, I'm just getting a little excited, and move on. And so this is where I got into the idea of basically, well, it's one of the situations. There's another situation where I said, okay, we have to constrain Claude so that he only behaves in certain ways. And obviously, that's the whole idea of the harness, right? Is to constrain Claude so it behaves in specific ways. But it was still a little too broad. So it had the ability to look at when I would talk to Claude, I would get the sense that it actually is more aware of my other projects than I want it to be at that time. And so I realized, like, okay, you really have to put guardrails around the harness, inside of the harness, when you're working on some of these projects or clients. So one of the first things that I did is implement this session context locking. And this basically says I have a command to use client command, and I can either lock Claude into operating on a client or on a project for a specific client. And this means then I don't have to constantly worry, is it making a change to a project I don't want it to touch? Am I even on the correct project, et cetera, et cetera. But then that even wasn't enough. As I just explained earlier, I would occasionally see that my agents aren't being marshaled correctly. So Claude was doing too much of the work, forgetting to call certain agents, which brought me to the point where I had to implement a product manager command and say, I need to put you into a mode so that when I speak to you freely, you know that I'm not talking to you, Claude Sonnet. I'm actually talking to the agent who's the product manager, and then he will actually marshal the resources based on what I say. So that's what I've done here, is create another command that just kind of locks Claude in. So he's locked into a project or a client, and he's locked into a mode within that project. And this, again, helps kind of restrain Claude so that so he doesn't overstep his bounds. He marshals the request to the proper agents, and then we get the best resource utilization as possible. And of course, all of this is in the README on the repo, guys, so anybody can go and check it out. There are instructions in here as far as how to run the setup command so that it'll walk you through configuring this or customizing it for yourself and for your own usage. And I think what's important probably to mention before I show my version is just that it takes some massaging. And you have to be careful with it. You have to just pay attention to what it's doing so that you know to direct the harness in the how you want it to behave versus how you don't want it to behave. It definitely will do its own thing. And sometimes you might have to remind it to read its memory, which it does when I tell it to commit. Like, hey, you told me not to commit. I was like, reread your memory. He's like, oh, you didn't want me to attribute commits to Claude. Sorry. And it does it over and over again, and I'm not sure why. But anyway, the point is, can't get fooled again. That's the point.
Super cool. I'm going to mess around with it. And thanks for sharing it. Thanks for making it open source. I also think that's what's cool about all these software or code becoming a what's the term? Code becoming a commodity? No, like it's whatever. We got the code. We don't need it anymore. Let's share it. It's open source. Everyone gets this, and we just enter in this age of everything is just kind of like free.
We've been heading that way for a long time, and I'm
Right.
glad to see that. What do they code democratization? Perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, it's back to, this is a total tangent, but like now we're just back to the like where what's not free is the energy associated with building the code, right? Yeah.
Which we'll cover in issue 4 of Probably Fine.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah. Okay. So thanks everyone. And Ron, can anyone find you, follow you besides GitHub?
Yeah, you can just you can get me on GitHub, or if you want to send me an email, you can send it to rdemerit, or even Probably Fine at 570n3r.com.
Or just join AI Captains Academy.
Yeah, just come to AI Captains. I'm there. I respond to every message that gets sent to me, which is one. But see, I'm consistent. That's good.
Yeah.